Why punish the Christians for Islamic terror?
Because I don't think it's Islamic terror that's taking place in the first place. I think we have to disabuse ourselves of that notion that this is a battle between Muslim and Jew, or that, constantly you heard after the October event was that Hamas, Hamas, Hamas. Even to this day, we hear it's Hamas,
Yes.
Hamas, Hamas. What is Hamas? Hamas are people who have had their homes taken from them, who, if they live in Gaza, have not been basically been in an open air prison for certainly the last 20 years going on. Even when the Israelis withdrew from Gaza, they didn't leave open borders. There was no freedom for people in Gaza to develop their economy. If I know people who wanted to try to go to school in America and couldn't get out of Gaza, had a Fulbright scholarship and weren't able to leave.
I mean, couldn't get out.
Israel didn't give them permission. So what kind of freedom is that? If you live in Gaza,
They couldn't even fly out?
no. And their airport had been bombed in 2000 and early on. 2000, there was an airport built soon after the Oslo Accords, but Israel has intervened many times in Gaza and little by little destroyed. When I first went there in 2002, after the second Intifada started, I remember saying to my mother back home, this is genocide, even that genocide by Chinese water torture. But now we're seeing genocide on steroids. What's going
You're
on?
American, I should say.
Yes, I'm born in America. Yeah, lived in America. And so getting back to Hamas, so also the school I was at has 350 girls. It's in a town that's 98% Muslim. Though it has roots, it's the roots of where Bethany, where on our school grounds is a stone from the 6th century. This is where Christ met Martha at the resurrection. So we're talking about, and it's the road leading, there's still part of the road that existed when Christ walked during that time and would have seen Lazarus and Martha and Mary. Lazarus's tomb is down the road, right? And so permeated even with Palestinian Muslim culture is the sense that Christians lived here and they recognize Jesus as a prophet. So they respect him I'm not saying that everything is perfect. You can't have divisions between, just like even with Christians. Some Christians might think we should have, allow politics to be in the church or legislate Christian morality. And others would think totally different. So you can have sort of differences of opinion, if you will, and we can all live with each other between that. So with Muslim and Christian, they can have their differences, but overall the Palestinian culture is infused with both there.
So you were a nun in a majority Muslim town, a Christian nun.
Yep.
In your habit, I assume.
Mm-hmm. And which also was to an advantage because pious Muslims are not jihadists, the ones that I know. I'm not saying other parts of the world that may be the case, but in Palestine, it's simply not the case, or Syria or Lebanon or Iraq. The Muslims that for the most part are, they've all grown up together, the Christians and the Muslims. And, there's a certain amount of commonality and respect. And so being dressed like this was just like many of the women there, right? So they kind of respected that. There's the same sort of conservative culture. There's the same sort of idea that we're both have some same basic values of compassion for our neighbor, of taking care of our families, and trying to live. They have their form of fasting and almsgiving, and it's actually very important to them. And I think the best parts of Islam come from its development from Christian ideas that Muhammad came to know. I'm sure of that. You can sense it.
This is a very different story from the one that we're told in the American media, that Christians are imperiled by Muslims in the Middle East.
They are not imperiled by Muslims in Palestine. That is an absolute fact. And that's just simply not the case. And again, going back to my school, in our school, we had icons, which are part of the Orthodox tradition, pictures of saints and crosses in every classroom. No problem with that. I could show you a photograph, I can't now, but of the graduates of the latest high school graduation. And, they're embracing the nuns there. They're dressed actually in a more secular way. And it all
So a lot of your students were Muslim?
98%. The only Christian
of your students were
Muslims.
Muslims?
Yeah. And about half the teachers during the time I was there, some Muslim, some Christian.
In a Christian school.
Yes. And actually that's all throughout Palestine. The Orthodox is relatively small. We do have schools in many of the Palestinian towns, but also Catholic schools, Lutheran schools. And most of the population, most of the students are Muslims.
Huh.
And the beautiful thing about where the great danger is, if the Christians continue to diminish, a key part of Palestinian society and within Israel as well. You go to Nazareth, you'll see many Catholic-run hospitals, schools. And so it's a fabric, it's a part of the whole character.
But I'm just still confused by the idea that the Christian population is declining under Israeli rule.
Yeah.
You would think just the opposite.
What gives them what I observed from my time in Israel and going back every year is that they do not want any Palestinians there. So the majority of Christians in Israel and Palestine are Palestinian. So they have to leave too. What grieves me is that the Holocaust is a horrible, horrible thing that happened. People slaughtered fairly quickly. Sometimes the thought comes to me when I've driven between, there's a tunnel road that goes from Jerusalem to Bethlehem, and it's only for the settlers to go on down to the continued settlements that lead down further south in Israel to Hebron, or actually I shouldn't say Israel, into Palestine, other Palestinian territory. As you're going, that tunnel road has been carved out of land that belongs to people in Bethlehem and Beit Jala, which you're passing by on that tunnel road. So it's like a living death. How would you like to be a man? That was your grandfather's olive trees, but now it's controlled by Israel, and you're not even allowed to drive on that road. And on that very same road, I remember a poignant picture. There was a woman that worked at our convent, she was a nurse and took care of the nuns, and she had a home, a very typical stone Arab home. Beautiful home with grapevines. I remember going to pick the grapes at the house. That is now they just confiscated the land. She fought it. She fought as long as she could to try to keep her property. And I remember passing by there some years, and there's slowly new Israel homes are being built that look very different. And there's something that looks as if it, belongs to biblical Palestine. And so what I was getting at is that these people, they're dying as they're living. Because it's like, and I remember sitting at the home of one of those people in Beit Jala, and they had lived in the center of town. It was his father's home. And then he built a new one near the Talitha Kumi Lutheran school. And I literally was sitting with them one afternoon, and he gets a call from his brother. The Israelis are here. They're pulling up our olive trees, cutting them down on some of their land. And he ran over. He collected as many of the trees as he could. Military order. That's what it was. They just go and do it, even though it's not their land. And then military order, nothing you can do. They have jeeps and weapons. You're not going to stop them. But he was able to take some of those trees. This shows the resiliency, and the word is samud. It's like, it's a quiet persistence. This is our land, and we're going to stay here. And this man is a doctor who studied in Hungary. He took those olive trees, and they now are on a plot of land next to his new house and trying to grow. So it's like, I'm not sure what Israel is trying to do. I mean, it's horrific what's going on in Gaza. And what is very concerning to me, and why I'm grateful to be on your show, is that what is going to happen, the people that I know in the West Bank, Christian and Muslim, it's not said, but it's like, we're next. That what they've done to Gaza is going to come to us, because who's going to stop them? Already in the northern parts where the UNRWA, the refugee camps were, I was there in September. They had already been making raids. I was in the center of Jenin, right in front of the Catholic Church. They had bulldozed the middle of the road and broken the water pipes. No bullet holes. I lived in 2002 during the Intifada in Bethlehem. The whole city was full of bullet holes. So there hadn't been any confrontations, but they were still bulldozing and doing what they wanted to do to wreck the infrastructure, to make it harder for people to go to work up there. But now, in the last 8 months, they've cleared out at least 15,000 people in Tulkarm and Jenin in the northern part. They're not in their homes. Do you hear those stories? And these affect Christians as well.